I'm at Augen Gallery in the Desoto Building, and we're at an exhibition called Jesus, which is David Levinthal and Jim Riswold. So David, thanks for joining us. One thing I was curious about with this show, Jesus, is well, how did you start the whole process of it? What gave you the idea to do this show?
The idea started quite a while ago. I was spending a lot of time in Vienna and staying in the old city near the cathedral, and I became fascinated by all the sort of religious objects that I saw that were for sale. And so about 12 years ago, I did a few large polaroids of some of these objects, but I never really pursued it beyond that. And
this was in the church?
Well, no, these were objects that I found, brought back to New York, and then photographed at the Polaroid studio.
Okay.
And in 2004, I said to my wife that if George Bush is reelected, I think I'm going to reinvestigate this series. And I said that somewhat facetiously, but I felt that there was a sort of wave of religiousness that was, I remember back in the 60s where Time magazine had an issue where the cover said, "Is God dead?" So we've gone to the period where there was a real lessening of the influence of religion to a period where we had a very sort of religious-centric ideology in this country. So that's what sort of inspired me to
when he got reelected.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I found, I was really amazed at how much material was so readily available. I mean, everything I use is, commercially available objects that one could purchase. A crucifixion playset,
okay.
A resurrection playset.
Right.
10 or 11 different styles of nativity scenes.
Are you going to church stores to get these, or are these in other stores?
No, I'm actually getting most of them on the internet.
Okay.
Through places like eBay. There are a number of manufacturers. I did go to a number of religious stores early on, but I found there was so much material available on the internet that became sort of my main focus as to researching.
So you get the things online. You're getting your materials online. I would imagine that when you're scouting for materials, you don't necessarily know the success of them, right? Are you just bringing things in and then
pretty much? I mean, I think for me, part of the process whenever I work on a series is always gathering material. And during that gathering process, a lot of my ideas get formulated. And they're often initial ideas because as I start the work, those ideas will evolve and change. In the last part of this series, which to me is some of the most interesting, are these images of the Stations of the Cross.
Yes.
These are actually a set of figures. They're about 18 inches tall, plaster reliefs that came from an old church. And I found a store in Atlanta that is sort of a clearinghouse for religious objects from older deconsecrated churches.
So these are maybe discontinued, is what you're saying? Sometimes?
Well, they're often selling them to other churches.
Okay.
Obviously, something like this, there really wouldn't be a market for it in another church because they've weathered, they're deteriorating. But I found them extremely beautiful. I mean, they really reminded me of sort of maybe early Renaissance type paintings with the chipping of the paint coming off. The depth of these, there wasn't a lot of depth. There might have been 2 or 3 inches, but it was enough for me to really create this wonderful sort of tableau feeling to the work.
And so also the way you're shooting it, I mean, you're shooting it, you're kind of making it like it's an old Renaissance or Baroque painting, right? That's
Very
part
much
of it.
so, yeah.
That's part of it. So this is all in your own technique of what you're doing in the darkroom.
Well, these are all polaroids, so this is actually what comes out of the camera.
Okay.
There is no darkroom.
There is
so
no darkroom,
literally,
sorry.
the finished artwork comes out of the camera. We cut it, we wait a minute, peel it apart, and you have the finished artwork. So it's actually a very interactive process in that regard.
Can I ask you, people that you sell these things, or rather, I should say, people that you buy these things from, when you're actually dealing, maybe not on the internet, but in some other way, do these people end up seeing your artwork, seeing what you do with it, and what is the response from Christians, let's just say, about what you're doing?
Well, it's interesting. When I first showed this work in New York, I guess a year and a half or 2 years ago, there's a Catholic priest who came to the opening. And,
yes, the Catholic priest.
The Catholic priest came to the opening, and he so loved the work that he said in his sermon on Sunday he was going to encourage his parishioners to all come and see the show, which made me feel very good, because it made me feel that I had done what I set out to do, which is create work that was engaging to a broad spectrum of people, and that it would allow people to really develop their own response to the work.
All right, this is not the first time you've shown in Portland, Oregon, is it, David?
No, previously I did a sort of a small retrospective show at Augen Gallery a few years ago, and so this is really my second trip to Portland as an artist. I made one trip to Portland in 1965 when I was a high school student looking at Reed College.
Well, you like it okay then, I guess?
I did.
All right, all
Although
right.
I did end up going to Stanford, I did like Reed.
All right, so David Levinthal at Augen Gallery at the Desoto in Portland, Oregon. Thanks a lot, David.
Thank you.